Hey guys, Kelade here. So it looks like Blizzard is attempting their first pass at a bunch of legendaries after patch 9.1 has now been released. They just made a blog post about this earlier today, where essentially if you read through it, predominantly most specs are all getting buffed, right? Everything is increasing in power for legendaries, and then you get down to the section. There's one rogue one that also gets nerfed, but you get down to the warrior section. Unfortunately, we're currently looking at a nerf to the Venthyr legendary, the Sinful Surge legendary. This was originally already nerfed. I think it started off at 3 seconds. It was now nerfed to the 2 seconds it is now. And we still don't even have it on live yet. And it's now projected to be nerfed even further to 1.5 seconds extension. Now, I hope Blizzard realizes how this item works, how it works in sims, right? Because if you currently look at these like simulation lists, and it's like, yeah, Fury is very high up there, right? But this is pure single target. This is zero mechanics. And as you guys might have seen in the current raids and stuff that's out, every single fight has mechanics. And there's a lot of fights right now, even, which I think is good. There's a lot of fights where you do mechanics while nothing else is going on. And the Sinful Surge legendary loses so much damage if you don't have 100% uptime in order to keep this buff as much as you can. And just to give you guys some idea in essentially what this legendary does. So here's two sims. First sim is using Signet of Tormented Kings. You can then see what the simulation uptime is if you have this legendary instead. It's around 37% uptime on your recklessness, right? This is just from the fact that sometimes your Blaze Storm can also proc additional recklessness, right? This is what the average uptime is on there. But if you put the Sinful Surge legendary, and as long as you're not doing any mechanics and you're continuing to go with your rotation, right now, before this 2 second to 1.5 second nerf, your uptime is going to be around 51%. So of course with this nerf, expect this to drop pretty significantly because it's getting nerfed by 25%. I don't think Blizzard should have done this because one is you are losing a lot of AoE and Mythic Plus damage to change from Night Fae to Venthyr. And on top of that, as we've seen, there's probably a lot of memes about it right now. Sylvanas as a fight right now on Heroic, it doesn't do anything past 50%. So you don't really get to execute Sylvanas that much even, right? The most important boss in a raid, essentially for a lot of Mythic raiding, your raid comps and what you're bringing to a raid are going to be revolving around what is needed for the last boss. So that boss missing execute phase really hurts overall. And on top of that, if they nerf this even further, it's just a huge waste of time for everybody that switched over to Venthyr from Night Fae, and now potentially you might have to switch back. Now, on the bright side, there is currently a WoW dev going around kind of responding to concerns on Twitter a little bit. So it seems like they might actually revisit this. But it is concerning with what they said, right? So here's the tweet regarding them passing along the feedback. In regards to Sinful, a lot of these changes are based off of what's on the PTR, sims, and community feedback. Once again, they should not be looking at these sims without understanding how legendaries work, and especially how the Sinful legendary works. This Sinful legendary is the prime example of how it's very difficult sometimes to do your sim DPS. Now, this is not the case across the board. There are definitely legendaries out there where they can do more than sim DPS in certain situations. And then there's the ones where it's easy. But this legendary, because of the way it works, which is uninterrupted DPS, you're just doing your rotation, you're not moving off the target for any amount of time, this legendary gets the most value from that. And any interruptions to that will heavily hurt the effectiveness of this legendary. So for them to just look at sims like this and nerf it based upon that is a huge mistake. The other thing is, I'm not even sure about the PTR feedback. Really, there's not that many people, to be honest, that actually test on the PTR, and it can actually even make the test timings for raids. Personally, I can never ever make any single raid test because it's in the middle of the day where people normally have to work. So I don't necessarily agree with that. And community feedback, I don't think there's anybody out there going around saying Fury is OP. So I feel like that's also really weird for them to be nerfing it, because you have to look at this in the scope of everything, right? Every other legendary on this list is getting buffed. Why are they only nerfing 2 legendaries and they're not even in OP classes and specs? They're nerfing a warrior and they're nerfing a rogue. I don't think anybody currently looks at those 2 specs and goes, they're too OP, it needs to be nerfed. So very questionable around that. Now, unfortunately, I don't want to hammer him too much and their decisions, because I do think it's good that Blizzard devs are responding on Twitter. But I think this is also why they normally don't, because if they respond, you can see some of their logic and their reasonings doesn't really make sense, and they would get ripped to shreds too much. So I don't want to talk about the dev anymore, but hopefully they revert this change, because I think without it, you're going to be hard pressed, especially with some of the AoE stuff that I've seen in their raids right now, to not want to just switch back to Night Fae, because you're getting so much more DPS on the AoE aspects with Night Fae that is not really going to be made up by some of this potential single target DPS increase you would get with Venthyr, especially if this change goes through. But I'll keep you guys updated if there's any other changes. And as always, thanks for checking out the video, guys. Feel free to subscribe to see more. See ya.